Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Killer Creation. In this series, I create a killer and a survivor for the asymmetrical horror survival game Dead by Daylight. I do try to keep perks and powers balanced, but that doesn't always work out. But your feedback on the official Dead by Daylight forums, and the Dead by Daylight and Furry Aminos, as well as Twitter, has really helped. You can find the links for those places in the description or at the end of the video. As always, please consider giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell to be one of the first to know when I release new content. I'm really glad to see all the interest in this series, and since it was requested in my tier list video, I'll be starting a new series called Rising Tier that will premiere this Monday on October 14th, which will take a look at killers in Dead by Daylight that are in B and C tier, and making suggestions on how to bring them up to A and S tier. So look forward to that. With all of that out of the way, let's jump into today's killer creation and take a look at today's killer, the Queen. Tarvesh was a voodoo mambo in a small neighborhood just outside the French Quarter of New Orleans. She regularly performed rituals and rites to beseech the spirits to aid the people of her community whenever they would bring their devotions and requests. All was not well though. In the late 1950s, racial tensions were at an all-time high. Tarvesh's prayers for peace went unanswered, but as she continued to call on the Loa, a single powerful voice began to whisper back to her in her dreams. It demanded vengeance. It commanded her to take retribution for the innocent souls lost to such cruelty. She perceived the voice to be that of Bondi himself, aching for justice through her. Tarvesh did not want to kill, but each night she slept after the death of one of the people in her community, the cry for justice and retribution became ever stronger. The Mambo resisted until the horror was outside her very door. Tarvesh heard an angry group of men running down her road, and the screams of a girl mixed within their shouts. The Mambo marched over to the men and began using the tools of her trade to dispatch them. Her ritual dagger opened their throats. She spat blinding powder into their eyes, quickly fashioned voodoo dolls snapped the legs and arms of some so she could easily use her dagger to finish them off. Tarvesh cried out in despair and begged Bondi for forgiveness. Bondi demanded that Tarvesh offer up her own life as penance. Tarvesh agreed to the terms. She took her ritual dagger and opened her own throat. As her blood rushed free and her body went limp, Bondi revealed itself to her, but it was not Bondi, and the bond she made with the entity could not be broken. So now we know how the Queen came to serve the entity. Let's take a quick look at her base stats, then move on to her powers and perks. The Queen moves at a swift 4.6 meters per second, has a smaller 24 meter terror radius, and is of average height for a killer. She's quick and gives only a small warning before she can come in and start swinging. Now let's move on to her powers. The Queen's first power is called Loa's Favor. Maps with the Queen gain an additional 5 dull totems. Whenever a survivor comes within 10 meters of a totem, their aura is revealed in yellow for 3 seconds. If a survivor begins to cleanse a totem, their aura is revealed in red for 5 seconds. Totems you control take 6 seconds longer to cleanse. The Queen's second power is called Voodoo Dolls. Whenever the Queen injures or hooks her survivor, you may use this power within 5 seconds by tapping the M2 button to gain a token. The Queen cannot attack while using voodoo dolls. The first use of this power after hitting a survivor will also create a doll that resembles that survivor. On the second use on that same survivor, the Queen adds a line of the survivor's blood to their doll. Once the Queen has a single or multiple dolls made with a survivor's blood on it, for a total of 4 dolls, 1 per survivor, she can swap to this power at any time by channeling the left control button and swap through dolls with the spacebar to use the doll she chooses. While using voodoo dolls, the Queen can use the attack button to use up a token on a doll. When she does this, the doll loses its bloodline, and she injures the chosen survivor and forces them to scream and reveal their location, so long as they are within her terror radius. If a survivor is already injured and this power is used on their doll, they are not brought into the dying state. Instead, they scream to reveal their location and receive the exhausted status effect for 30 seconds. And that does it for the Queen's powers. Loa's Favor sets the Queen up to be a heavy hex user, but doesn't require it to make use of her power. In fact, with the prominence of perks like Inner Strength in the current meta, it becomes a decently powerful anti-heal ability. Voodoo Dolls is a slow setup power that requires the Queen to actively hunt and hit the survivors. Since it requires 2 hits on the same survivor to make it fully active for a single use, this makes the Queen a late game killer. However, since she can get a token each time she hits or hooks her survivor, that means she'll have plenty of tokens to use by the time it comes to start using her dolls. A powerful combination for this power would likely be something like Hex Ruin, Hex Haunted Grounds, Light of the Loa, which we'll be discussing in her perks, and Distressing. A build like this would give you ample knowledge of the whereabouts of survivors, slow them down, threaten to give you a one-shot on them, and increase your terror radius to make your voodoo dolls more effective. But that will do it for the Queen's powers. Let's move on to her perks. The Queen's first perk is called Hex on Death's Wings. The eyes of the entity and the Loa are everywhere. Passing by them announces the coming of doom. Whenever a survivor alerts a crow, the entity progress speed while they are on the hook is increased by 0.2, 0.5, or 1% to a maximum of 2, 5, or 10%. The Queen's second perk is called Light of the Loa. The Loa bring the light of the spirit realm even to things with no life, and that light clings ever stronger in the dark of the entity's realm. All totems are lit and burn as if they were hex totems. All effects that work with hex totems work with dull totems that are made to look like hex totems in this way. When a survivor's aura is revealed, it is revealed for an additional 1, 2, or 3 seconds. The Queen's third perk is called Righteous Fury. The wrongs you have witnessed have manifested themselves into the target of your fury. Whenever a generator is completed within 3, 5, or 8 seconds of 2 or more survivors working on it, you would gain a 5, 10, or 15% increase speed for 4, 6, or 8 seconds. And that's all for the Queen's perks. I think she offers some very interesting effects to add to your killer's arsenal. Hex on Death's Wings makes for a very subtle way of making hooked survivors reach that second stage faster, or get sacrificed faster just by having them move around the map. Light of the Loa forces survivors to spend time cleansing totems in fear of what they could possibly be, while also adding some much needed aura revelation time for the killer's information. And Righteous Fury gives the killer a speed boost in response to survivors doubling up on generators. But that will do it for the Queen. Now let's take a look at our newest survivor, Piper Streichert. Piper Streichert was a rising star in the world of private security in Las Vegas. She earned a reputation as a crack cyber defense professional, as well as an excellent plant in the crowds to spot robberies or attempts to undermine a casino's standard security measures. She would get wind of schemes to pay off casino personnel and insert herself as the point of contact for criminals hoping to have an inside man on their job. She would use misdirection to evade their suspicion and alter details and messages they sent her when she replied to keep them 2 steps behind and working toward the wrong objective. She was known to be flamboyant in her approach and boisterous in her success. This led to her reputation growing outside the sphere of casino security and into the realms of criminals and crime families she had helped to put behind bars. During one plot to get into a casino's vault, Piper began to use her standard tricks, working the criminals into thinking they were going for the vault's security net while she was actually helping them reveal themselves on the security cameras. What she didn't know was that these criminals had hired a counter-cyber specialist who was tracing her information to lock down her location. All too late, Piper realized that there were men outside her office door and that they were getting ready to break in. She wasn't one for physical confrontation and tried thinking of a way to get out and get help. A thought popped into her head: kill the power, kill the light, make it too dark for them to find her. She rushed down to the basement and locked its door. She made it to the breaker and slapped all the levers off. The building went dark. As she waited to hear any sort of noise, she noticed smoke starting to billow at her feet. She moved to find the breaker box, but found nothing but air. She looked around and curiously only saw a small campfire in the distance. And now we know how Piper came into the entity's realm. So let's take a look at her perks and see how she can help out the other survivors. Piper's first perk is called Misdirection. Experience has taught you how to throw people off your tracks. They expect you to zig, so you zag 3 times instead. Whenever a chase you enter ends, you gain a token. You can have a maximum of 1, 2, or 3 tokens. You may use a token by using the M2 button. Whenever you use a token, scratch marks you leave go in the opposite direction of your movement for 1, 2, or 3 seconds. Ending a chase within 10 seconds of a token being used does not gain you a token. Piper's second perk is called Altered Details. Whenever your opponents think they have a way to track you, you always have a way to change the details. Your status icon reveals the opposite of your current status. You appear healed when injured or broken, injured when dying, or normally healthy when under effects that would make you appear under different effects. Piper's third perk is called Work Smarter, Not Harder. You know how to make the bad guys do the hard work for you when they think they're trying to hurt you. Whenever a generator is kicked within 10, 15, or 20 seconds of you working on it, it is progressed in the same amount that the kick would have regressed it instead, then begins to regress normally. And that does it for Piper's perks. I think she has a little something for everyone. Misdirection is a great perk for players who are skilled at looping and running killers, giving them the ability to earn chances at baffling and confusing the killer. It would make a fantastic combo with things like Lithe, Dance With Me, and Quick and Quiet. Altered Details would never be a meta perk, but it would be one to keep killers second guessing what they've done and who all they have injured, sick, or whatever. Just a little something to mind game the killer without having to really do anything. Work Smarter Not Harder sets you up to have a better chance at returning to a generator generator that is closer to where you left it than when the killer chases you off of it. And if you have the generator progressed enough, the killer might actually finish repairing the generator for you. Work Smarter Not Harder does take into account perks like Pop Goes the Weasel when it considers how much progress is given to the generator when it is kicked. So there's a good chance that you could come back to a generator that is much further along than it was when you left it. Overall, I think Piper's perks would be a great addition to the game. She has a little something for everyone, with 2 different mind game perks for those who like to run the killer or mess with them in other ways, and a generator perk for the gen jockeys. But that will do it for today's killer creation. I hope you all like the Queen and Piper. I had a lot of fun coming up with them. If you liked the video, please consider giving it a like. If you didn't, please feel free to give it a dislike and let me know why down in the comments. I hope you all have a great day, and as always, stay positive.